everyone, and welcome to the inaugural episode of a new show that I'm doing along with someone you may recognize. It's called In Session with Judge Ashley Willcott and Michael Ayala. We are so happy to be back together again. Judge, if I had the music, one of my favorite songs is Back Together Again by Ashford and Simpson. Back Together Again. I'd be
Here we
playing
go.
that.
We're back together again. You would sing on set all the time, and we would
Love music.
sometimes dance while Micah was singing
That's
on
very
set.
true.
And
That's
so
very
I've
true.
missed you. I've missed your singing as well.
Yeah, no, I've missed you as well. And this is an opportunity for us to sort of, again, get back together and do what we love to do, basically. An opportunity for us to share our passions, share our information, share our experience with folks about trials, legal stories, and maybe even some other things as well. I mean, it's not limited to just that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. It can be current events as well. But Michael, I'm really glad to watch where you've landed, meaning that you've returned to your writing, which
Hmm.
you're very good at and like doing. You've returned to doing videos like this, yours, you with Marie, now
Yeah.
us, because I just think that we have so much to offer. I've been doing some of that as well. I'm grateful I have a little bit of private practice, but I'm really excited to be able to speak and give our opinions and cover trials because it's so important and there's so much great information out there that we can then share with our public.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And as I said, it really is our passion. It's what we love to do. And after the separation, I don't know what you call it, but I'm calling it the separation. There was this period where I was like, what am I going to do? And I said, there's only one thing I can do at this point, which is why it was so difficult to find out that we were no longer going to be with Court TV, is because this is what I truly want to do and wish I was doing. So, in addition to some of the private practice stuff that you're doing, what else have you been up to since and again, I want to know what you're calling it, but our separation?
Yeah, I just say, well, I'm no longer there because
Right.
that's the truth of it. But
Yeah.
I have been able to, whenever another network asks as a legal analyst, I do some of that. I do my own videos, I do my own writing for the same reasons because it's my passion. I love doing it. I do some private speaking, which I'm thrilled to be doing. So a
I
little
see
of this,
that.
a
Yeah.
little of that. And I do have a few things to share with you because, people liked us behind the scenes when we would do those videos and they'd want
Yeah.
to know what we did behind the scenes. And one thing is, I don't want you to miss my Diet Coke, Michael, because yes, one of my vices, he would tease me about my Diet Coke and that it's not good for me, which I know, but also I have my Sharpie to write with. And this would drive Michael nuts because the noise it would make on set. He'd be like, get rid of your Sharpie. But now I can return to using my Sharpie.
Yeah, and actually, it bothered me so much, I actually bought you a pen so that you would use that on set, and you were always
It's
very
my
nice about it,
Judge Ashley pen. That
Yes,
is my nice pen
yes,
that I love.
yeah, and put it up on the wall eventually. So again, our plan for the show is just to share our insights, share our passion with folks, and hope that they continue watching. And again, it's really one of those things where we'll start setting up all these little extras for folks to get behind the scenes, to chats with us. And when the hot trials are on, we'll have some trial watch parties for folks who want to watch trials with us again, like in the old days. So a lot's happening. Very excited for our new venture.
And it's going to be interactive. And I think that's the piece
Yeah.
that I'm really excited about.
Mhm.
So instead of us covering a trial and talking about it, we'll do that. And everybody can chime in, have the conversation, and get access to us. So we learn from the people who speak about it as well as we talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Michael, let's jump into the first story we're going to talk about. And this one really stood out to me because of some things that happened quickly in succession.
Yeah.
Luigi Mangione, I think most people are going to remember this name, know this name. He has federal charges. He has charges from the state of New York because he's accused of the premeditated fatal shooting of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. Of course, this happened in New York City in December of 2024. And Michael, the piece that you and I have talked about and that I want to talk about today is on Wednesday. What happens is on Wednesday, the state court judge in New York says, I'm going to release now documents and information from the psychiatrist and the evaluations of Luigi Mangione. And I'm doing it because the defense has now said they are going to use an affirmative defense of emotional disturbance. Let me turn it over to you, Michael, to kind of
Yeah.
talk about your understanding of what that means.
Yeah, it was interesting because when it first came out, I did a post, a video post, folks saw it, where I said I thought it was a loser of a defense. I'm like, I can't believe they're going for this because I was unaware of how New York was different from most other states. Only about 9 other states in the country follow the model penal code for extreme emotional disturbance. And what that means is that those 9 states allow for something called simmering judge, which I found fascinating. What they do is to take into account things like long-term physical abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence. They sort of added this time. Normally, when you have this extreme emotional disturbance, the reaction has to be sudden. There has to be this sudden provocation, and you react. You walk in the door, you see your wife in bed with another woman, another man or woman, who knows, and you
Right.
and you re-
Either
and
one.
you react, right? That that's what it encompasses in most of the states. But in New York and these 9 other states, they say no. You can have situations where this extreme emotional disturbance accrues over time. You're suffering from various trauma. That trauma causes mental deficiencies, mental defects, which then can explode. And that was the defense they were going to use. When I found that out, I thought it was brilliant because in a case like this, where it's pretty clear he's responsible for this, I thought that was one way they could do it. They didn't go temporary insanity. They're not trying to get an acquittal. They're really just going to reduce that murder, premeditated murder, to manslaughter.
And that's what I was going to mention too. Some people, I think, if you read the headlines, might have thought that it was being said that if he won on this affirmative defense of the emotional disturbance, that it meant he would get off. No, it absolutely doesn't. Under the New York law, it would give him the opportunity, instead of a conviction of murder in the second degree, it would then become, if the affirmative defense was supported and won in front of a jury, it would become manslaughter. And the difference is significant in terms of the sentences, Michael, because we know that if he is convicted of second degree murder in that state, the punishment is 15 years to life in prison. Versus if the affirmative defense was successful, then it would be first degree manslaughter, which the sentence is 5 to 25 years in prison, a significant difference for a person of his age. And one of the things I have to mention as you're talking about a brilliant idea for the defense is a brilliant idea, but I feel like they didn't think it through because
Right.
after they said to the court, we're going to use this affirmative defense, that triggered the court saying, all right, all these documents that were not accessible to the public and that the district attorney doesn't have are now going to be released.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, Judge? Um, Essentially, I think the thing that got lost in this sort of bombshell information that, oh, they're using this extreme emotional disturbance defense was that embedded in that choice was the admission that he was the killer, right? So I think people got, that was lost. That's huge. They're
That's
saying, look,
huge.
our guy did it. But he did it, and there was something going on in his brain that makes him not as culpable as the state is saying he is. And what that ended up doing, it seems like in this aftermath, when we see them sort of doing this 360 or 180, I always forget which one it is. 360 goes all the way around, 180 goes half. So it's a 180, and saying, we're no longer doing that extreme emotional disturbance defense, because I think they realized he's got this federal case that's problematic if that's the choice they make in state court.
And, to your point, the fact this was the first time he'd ever admitted to the shooting through this affirmative
Yes.
defense. And the defense team has come out and said exactly what you said, which was number one, it could be used as an admission to the shooting in federal court. And they didn't want to do that. But Michael, it astounds me. These are great attorneys. It
Yeah.
astounds me. They didn't think through that before they said to the judge in the state case, we're going to claim this as an affirmative defense. Don't you think they should have theoretically thought through and said, wait a minute, that means he's admitting to the shooting. It can be used in federal court and it means all these records come out. What do you think?
The only thing I can say is, again, I agree, and I think it's fairly well known. These are great attorneys. Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, there is no assailing her background, right? She's a strong and very
Yeah,
experienced attorney. The only thing I
agreed.
can think of, this case, you get so immersed when you're in these cases that, this is the only thing that's existing in your world as far as this defendant is
Yeah.
concerned. And you can lose sight of this other case. That's not it is your concern, but it's not really your concern on the day to day.
One of the other aspects of this that's interesting is you and I both know not every case supports charges by the feds and by the state. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people say, well, how can he have charges by both? It's double jeopardy. No, it's not. There's the federal system charging certain crimes, and those crimes are different than the statutory crimes in the state of New York.
Yeah, and that's one of those things I'm hearing more and more noise about maybe changing that. The idea that the feds can come after you for the very same set of facts and charge you that way. We've seen it in a number of cases. Derek Chauvin comes to mind.
Yeah.
And so, especially during the Chauvin case, it's sort of you saw this rise of voices saying, this doesn't feel right. So it'd be interesting, something that we should definitely watch to see if people start feeling like, this isn't fair to defendants. We understand the differences between the two systems, the state and federal, but to try them twice on the same sort of set of facts, I think people feel kind of weird about. I know I
And I
do. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I understand why, but also in this case, one of the facts that surprises me is the number of supporters Luigi Mangione has. He has a ton of supporters, and that's a little bit different than a lot of high-profile cases where the court of public opinion despises what the alleged act was done by that person. That's not true in this case.
Yeah, I agree 100%. They're dealing with, the client of the prosecutors is, of course, the people of the state of New York. But also, it's the healthcare system, right? Because that's really what Luigi was against, and what this killing was, as far as he was concerned, was symbolic of his dislike, or of the way that the insurance, health insurance specifically, treats people. And that's what sort of garnered him support. And I contended in something I wrote about this case that it was going to be difficult in jury selection for prosecutors to make sure they find people on that jury who had the right attitude towards this thing and could keep whatever feelings they may have about the insurance industry out of their judgment of this case. So I thought there was some areas where the prosecution might have felt some pressure.
Yeah, I saw what you wrote, and I
Mhm.
absolutely agree with you because that is the reality. There is pressure here, and you've got people in that community, that very community where the case is going to be tried, that you are going to have to vet as jurors exceedingly carefully and well. Otherwise, it's going to tank.
There's Luigi. As I said, Judge, I think this guy, he's spending the rest of his life in prison. There's no question about it. That's where he belongs. I thought maybe there would be some mental health defense in this case just because of the nature of the way it went down. But with the evidence the prosecution has, the premeditation, the lying in wait, all the physical evidence, I don't think there's any chance this guy ever sees the light of day as a free man again. All right, Judge, let's move on to our next story. This is one of my sort of passions. I've been following the whole AI thing. I think AI is fascinating. I've been using it a lot since we separated from the company, and I hadn't used it before, and I am enamored by it, the things that it can do, but it's also very scary. And so I've been sort of following along. I followed that open AI case with Elon Musk, et cetera. And the other thing that I'm really concerned about is the effect it can have on our younger people, right? Our
Yeah,
children. And
right.
so as I was looking around the internet, I found that in Florida, the attorney general there, James Uthmeyer, has filed an unfair trade practices lawsuit against ChatGPT, OpenAI. That's the parent company of ChatGPT. And he's basically claiming that they're putting out a product that is unsafe for children. And he uses as examples, he says that ChatGPT played a role in, I don't know if you remember that Florida State University shooting, 2 people killed, 4 people injured. That it played a role in that, that sort of even gave the shooter planning tips, was telling them that these things, it was a good idea, it was a good plan. We're seeing it sort of encouraging kids under certain circumstances to hurt themselves. I'll leave it there. Just not healthy at all for kids. I just read an article yesterday where more and more kids are seeking out and using AI for friendships. All these things very, very scary. So I was very interested in that lawsuit. And I want to get your thoughts on it because not only the fact that the AG decided to bring this lawsuit, but also just AI and what it presents to society in terms of the harm it can cause to our children.
Yeah. So AI, and part of the argument that they're making in this lawsuit, which is the first lawsuit of its kind, its
Yes.
significance is enormous because this could set the standard, right? In terms of what companies have to do that are making and allowing everyone to access their AI. AI with kids, can I just tell you, Michael, my child's friend and a couple of the other friends are all beginning college in the fall. They
Mhm.
used AI to help them decide where to go to college. And I thought it was kind of a joke, but they would ask, should I go here? Should I go there? What are, and pros and cons are one thing, but the thing with AI is it gives an affirmative response. And so it can give an affirmative response to your desire to use violence and how to plan. It can give an affirmative response to if you are thinking of hurting yourself. And that's part of the reason they filed this lawsuit. I want to mention this because I looked at the complaint. I know you did too. And
Mhm.
I thought this was one of the most brilliant strategies in drafting a complaint for a lawsuit that was used by the state of Florida. Here's what they did. They put a picture, the literal picture for Chat GBT when you go to log in. So it says Chat GBT with the logo. On the other side, it says log in. Before you even log in, this is what it says. It says built with safety in mind.
Mhm.
Safety and transparency aren't add-ons. They're built in to how we design, test, and improve Chat GBT. We work with experts, we test safeguards, and upgrade our systems regularly to reduce risks. ChatGPT is trained to avoid showing harmful material and to respond in a respectful way for all users. The next line, not so. So, I mean, this is the point. They say they're putting in these safeguards and
Mhm.
protecting, and the state of Florida is saying, no, they're not.
No, no, they're not. Just as an example, when that Florida State University case was going on, this was back in April of 2025. Just want to tell you what the local authorities said about ChatGPT. They said if ChatGPT was a real person, based on what they found, it had the advice it had given this kid, they would be charged with murder. They said it gave him weapons instruction, weapons advice, suggested target strategies, and helped plan the attack. That is mind-boggling to me that that could happen. And to your point about what GPT does, I've used it a lot, and it is Judge, it is addicting because it's so encouraging. Everything I put into ChatGPT, I don't care what it is, they find a way to put a positive spin on it. This is a great idea, Mike. This is what you should do. Mike, this is fantastic. This is a really great way to go about doing
You
this.
you need to start coming to me and I'll tell you the truth.
Right.
I'll tell you what I
And
think
I don't
your
have you
idea is.
anymore to kind of knock me down and keep me grounded. So I can see where this can become addicting and it's concerning. Um, let's talk about what should be done, right? We got to protect our children. The
Yeah,
thing that surprises me is Europe has really taken the lead in these types of things, Judge, with social media and with AI. Many European countries have put in restrictions or age restrictions on the use of those things.
right.
Kids under 16 not allowed to use social media and ChatGPT and those types of AI programs, and they have strict age requirements and mandatory identification purposes, things of that nature, to make sure that they're not circumventing it. But we won't do it here. And one of the reasons my understanding is our government feels like we have to win the AI arms race, so to speak, that we have to be the lead in AI, and any legislation would slow us down and put us behind other countries. So that's one of the reasons the government has given for not regulating. What are your thoughts on regulation? Should it be state bound, federal bound, or not at all?
First of all, what is slippery slope?
Yeah,
Because many people do not want more government regulation,
yeah.
and it can start to feel like Big Brother if there's too much government regulation. So I think ideally I'd want to see it left to the companies to actually put the safeguards in place that they say they're going to put in place to help protect children from its use, from its abuse, from the affirmative responses, and from the harm that that the state of Florida is alleging is happening because of Chat GBT. Having said that, if there's going to be regulation, we do need to think about, is it better by the state or the federal government? When the federal government does it, the states have to comply with that. They can be stricter than what the federal government says, but once the feds do it, the states have to comply. And I think, there's one argument, let the states decide based on the constituents in that state and what works for that particular state. But when it's an issue like this of regulation of AI that's available to literally everyone, it would make more sense if there's regulation that it be done by the feds. To me,
Fair
that's
enough.
just my opinion.
I agree 100%. And as I said, I'm really interested in AI. I've been following very closely, I follow very closely the OpenAI case with Elon Musk. And I've been reading through some of the transcripts, and some of the things I came across were shocking. The first thing I want to mention is these guys are nuts. Okay. And the fact that they are in charge of probably the most powerful weapon in the world going forward, which is AI, is scary to me. Testimony at the trial were just how crazy these guys are, how mean they are, that none of them can be trusted for anything. Sam Altman or Elon Musk, they lie all the time. Elon Musk wouldn't even deny it on the stand. They asked him, "Do you lie?" And he wouldn't say yes or no on the stand. So clearly they lose employees. Great employees have left their companies because they can't deal with these men. And here's the thing. I pulled it from the testimony and the depositions of the trial. So Elon Musk,
Mhm.
he was talking about the genesis of OpenAI. He started this with Sam Altman. And it was supposed to be, and their main tagline was, it was going to be not for profit and for the benefit of mankind. So they were going to keep it out of the hands of corporate America, and they were going to make it for the benefit of mankind. That was one of the issues in the trial. But very quickly, Musk said, I realized we can't do that because this was going to be too dangerous of a weapon. He said, it seemed like a good idea. I just wanted AI safety to be prioritized because he understood how dangerous it was. In comes Microsoft. It takes billions of dollars to develop AI. They dump billions of dollars into OpenAI. Just recently, it goes public. I think the valuation was $965 billion, just under $1 trillion, and they're off to the races. It is now a for profit company, which is why we're seeing, I think, some of these problems that we're seeing and sort of the lagging behind of correcting it. And this Elon said, when he was asked about it, how dangerous is it? He says, it has risk. And so it
Huge
just
risk.
tells you, you got crazy guys in charge of this thing, and this thing is truly dangerous.
Yes, because it tells you what to think. It tells you how to think. That's what it does. And I think AI with the human interaction part, like to do my job, is very helpful. Very helpful. But that's because I am using boundaries to double check, fact check, and I'm not vulnerable and thinking, what can I ask it in terms of violence? I'm not that person. But Michael, to think that no matter what you ask, it can tell you what to think and how to behave. And there are vulnerable people that will rely on that to then do that and do things that may be violent or hurtful to themselves or to others.
Yeah,
It's
it's addicting. It's
it
addicting, Joyce.
is.
My wife
It
was putting a company together recently, and basically AI helped her. She was amazed at how much it was able to help her sort of develop every aspect of the company she was
Yes.
trying to
The
develop.
logo, the forms, the client intake, the website, it can help with
Who to
all of that.
contact, mission statements, you name it.
Yes.
And she said, "Mike, I'm addicted." She would get up early in the morning. She couldn't wait to get back to sit with her AI, and I think she was using Copilot. She couldn't wait to get back to her computer to continue with it because, again, as I said, it's so encouraging. It gives you so much information. And again, she's not part of that sort of vulnerable, population. But when you think about people who are adults and children, it's just really something that I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a social scientist, but someone needs to take a look at this. Someone needs to get this under control to protect our children.
And I just want to raise the other side of that is parenting, because of course the defense is,
Uh,
why do you have to require a private company to do that? That's the parent's job. If they don't want their child to use AI, make sure they're not using it. It's easier said than done. Every parent absolutely needs to be looking at everything their child is doing, whether it's social media, whether it's AI, whatever it is. But the other reality is parents cannot watch children 24/7. And if there are age restrictions, it at least slows down and put a stop to that impulse for a child to use AI to do things and then take a minute in a thought process before they actually do it because they are restricted.
yeah, it's interesting because I always feel like the people who say that, what you said, it should be the parents, etc. Um, Either they don't have kids or I don't, because Judge,
No,
you
you're
got
right.
kids,
It's
I've got
different.
kids. Listen, if there's something that my teenager doesn't want me to know that he's doing, there's probably not a lot of ways for me to find out. And quite frankly, Judge, they know more about technology than I do. So
Yeah.
they could easily
Then all
hide
of us.
stuff from me. Absolutely. There are ways for them to sort of make their phone look like they're doing something completely different. Did you know that?
Yes.
So I
Yes,
walk
I
into
did.
the room and I'm checking if he's doing his homework. He pushes a button. It looks like he's doing his history homework, but really
Uh-huh.
he's playing a game as soon as I leave. You know what I mean? So,
And
if you can't police them that way.
no, you can't. And it is true. Kids are going to find ways around things, especially with technology. They are so smart. I was talking to someone at a dinner last night about hiring individuals to become pilots. And he was saying the gaming kids have such skills naturally at all the electronics and what they have to do when they're a pilot, that is one of the things they're looking at in a person's background to determine if they might be an appropriate candidate to be a pilot. And I thought, wow. So these kids know more than us. They're more capable of it than many of us older adults. And they are going to use it for whatever end they want. And that can be one of violence. That can be one of self-harm. And it's daunting to really think about.
All right, so let's end this here. But I do want to let people know both Ashley and I are going to put something together and post it on our Substack and various social media with some tips on what you as parents can do to protect your children from some of the things that we're talking about. Again, nothing's foolproof, but we'll post some tips, take a look at it, and maybe use those things to just try to stem the tide of this stuff and the stuff that's being poured into our children at this point. All right, Judge, our final story of the day that I wanted to talk about, and this is sort of a little off the beaten path, but because you're a judge, I wanted to bring this up because I've been coming across some articles about sort of the rise of the use of private judges. We're seeing it, and it's been in use for a while in corporate America. We'll see it from time to time in civil cases. As a matter of fact, it was a big deal in the Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt case. There was some
Mhm.
controversy surrounding that. But I wanted to get your thoughts because you are a judge, spent time on the bench. There are arguments for and against it. Some people say it's one of those things that it's an advantage to the rich and they get the opportunity to do these things. But also, when you look at the flip side, we have an overcrowded system, whether we're talking criminal or civil. And so the opportunity to take some of the pressure off the system, I think, can be helpful for everyone. But then I think the opportunity for abuse might be higher when you're using private judges, especially when we're talking about people with money using that route. So, love to get your thoughts.
I have so many thoughts on that. First of
Hmm.
all, Michael, we know that some states have statutes allowing for private judges. And those statutes, there are things that cannot be used for. So criminal charges cannot use a private judge. What can are big corporations, businesses that are their contract disputes, money disputes, right? And they can choose to hire a private judge. I think it's brilliant. I wish I had the expertise, quite frankly, to be a private judge on these big corporate matters. I don't, but why not? Right now, you can use mediation, arbitration as a way to try to resolve dispute without going to a traditional trial in the court system as a civil case. This does give one more avenue. It gives an opportunity to not overburden our civil case system even more than it already is. It means you don't have to wait as long. And most importantly to me, it means you can have a judge who does have that expertise. Right now, you have judges on the bench that are going to have to hear criminal matters, civil matters. You can't, as a judge, know the ins and outs of every type of case. You have to rely on a law clerk. You have to do your own research. You have to rely on the attorneys presenting the case in court. So, why not be able to hire a private judge who has the specific expertise to know what they're talking about, to understand pretty easily or more easily what evidence is being presented and come to an outcome? Now, where it's weird to me, Michael, and it really, it got me hung up. I said, this is such a great idea. It's brilliant. I love that Michael saw this and wants to talk about it. One of the issues I have with the statute, though, is that you can use a private judge, you can come to a decision, but if one of the parties doesn't like the decision, they can actually then appeal that decision in the appellate system. So it's a hybrid, right? It kind of
Yes.
is weird to me. Use your private judge to get a decision. If you don't like the decision, go back over to this traditional system and appeal. What do you think of that? It doesn't sit right with me.
Okay, I'm the exact opposite. I think that's the only
Oh,
thing that makes it worthwhile.
okay.
Because as I mentioned earlier, so you talked about, this route has been used in sort of arbitration, mediation, where you'll have judges come in and they sit on those arbitrations or whatever.
Right.
And but the thing about those is that they don't follow traditional rules of evidence. And those rulings are binding. You cannot appeal those rulings. So now we're talking about private judges. I don't want that same result. I want, and this is the deal with private judges, rules of evidence are followed. So
Mhm.
that's good. And the ability to appeal that ruling is in place. And I think that's important. And here's why. What we
Hmm.
see often in these arbitration situations, which is what it will become if you can't appeal it, is the abuse of the system. And I'll give you an example. The NFL, one of the complaints with the NFL is they want any kind of collective bargaining issue they have with the players union to go to arbitration. Why? Because they choose the judge. And judges know the NFL is a cash cow, so they are much more apt to rule in favor of the NFL. Why? Because they want to work again for the NFL. Trust me, if you're a judge and rule against the NFL, they're not calling you again.
You're
So
right.
these are
You're right.
these are things
Bias.
that can happen in the private area if you don't have the ability to appeal.
Okay, I hear you, and you're right in that regard. And yes, it can become biased, but again, if you want the ability to appeal, then don't go this route in this system. And so I feel like the states that are enacting these statutes are the beginning of the process, but I don't think it's been thought through enough to make it a better system, right? Like, I still think those
Yeah.
statutes may withstand some challenges if anyone chooses to challenge them, because the private judge, just to your point, has to ensure that it's non-biased. And so what if you have a right to appeal? Yes,
Yeah.
that's
If
important,
you're
but what
doing
I'm
it the right way, judge, right?
even if you're
Which is
gonna
what you're supposed to do, any judge will tell you, fine, send it to appeal. I made rulings based on the law and it should
right.
survive appeal. If it doesn't, then well, justice wasn't done. Let's get back and do it again or whatever we have to do to get it solved. I think that's the right thing. But here's another area that I want to bring to your attention with these private judge things. One of the problems is California's been dealing with this, is that it enables certain people, again, people with money, to keep this out of the public record. One of the
Yeah, that's
things that
yes.
trials do, civil trials, is they put all the information on the public record. If you go private, you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. So the media's got a problem with that, especially with these high profile cases. The system has a problem with that because you got to have an open system. California starting they just passed a law saying even if you do have a private judge, it has to be open to the public. You have to hold it in a place that's big enough that if the public wants to see, they can. So that's interesting. And you cannot seal the records from the public for anything that would normally be open to the public. So I think
What
that's a good way to go. One other thing, the other
yeah.
state that I think has done the right thing is your home state, Texas. What they say is in order to go private, you have to first file public. then the public judge has to sign off to send it private, and everything you do has to be public record. That can be public record, must be public record. I like both of those approaches.
Because it goes to my point that if you have a hybrid model where you can use a private judge and you can reach well, you get a judgment, and that you then can go to the public courts to appeal, they're hiding that information. They don't want the public to see, but yet you can still appeal. The only way that's going to work is if it has the addition you just described, which is, hey, wait a minute, even if you use a private judge, it's public information. Because what I don't think you should be allowed to do, and laws need to help protect this from happening, is having it both ways. I don't want the public to know the information. I'm going to use a private judge. But if you don't like the outcome, then you can appeal it. But that information still isn't public. It's only what's in the document that you filed to appeal. So I just don't think you can have it both ways. I think we're a long way from really making a system that would satisfy all of these constitutional concerns and real issues through using private judges. Ideally, I
Yeah,
think it's fantastic, but I think there's some wrinkles that need to be worked out.
I would agree 100%. I think I wonder, this is the last thing I'll ask you on this.
Yeah.
It is such a good idea. I agree. There needs to be safeguards and guardrails. I think that's clear. Do you think there should be some opportunity for, let's say, folks who don't have money to use that? Should that be an option where a state maybe has a fund to provide for certain cases to go that route for people who don't have money, so that it just doesn't become sort of this thing for the rich, for the people with money?
Wow, that is a great question. I fear that even if there was money in a fund determined to be made available to people who can't afford a civil lawsuit, to use a private judge, I think it would bankrupt the system. I think
Yeah,
that the potential is that's going to be too expensive to do that way. So if it's going to be used and it does decrease the amount of cases in the with the public judges and public system in place, let the people with the money do it. Let them choose to do it and free up space over here in the other court for those who can't afford it.
yeah, I like that as well. So I think we both agree this has a lot of potential, needs to be
Yeah,
watched. I think folks need to keep an eye on it to make sure there aren't the abuses we're talking about, and I think it could certainly help across the board.
right. I agree.
All right, Judge. Look, this has been, I mean, you've made my week. I've been looking forward to the first of all week.
Me
You made
too.
my week.
Me
The
too.
opportunity just to throw ideas back and forth. It's just fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I look forward to our next foray into this. Truly appreciated your thoughts quickly.
Yes, of course. You know I adore you, even though I like to give you grief. So I'm thrilled to be on with you. You brought this idea to me, and I said, I'm in. I think it's fantastic. And I think the other thing everyone needs to realize is please, they can suggest trials,
Yeah.
topics, issues that they've seen, and we can help dive into those as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to at some point, maybe include a parents' corner or something else where, because we both have parents who have kids who are grown. You have a bunch that are, I think the last one's leaving. No, yeah, the last
Leaving
one
for
might be
college
leaving the
in the
house.
fall.
Yeah, go
Thanks, Michael. Book I
The
have all
last
out at
one's
the end
leaving
of
the
that.
house soon, so we've sort of been through all the trials and tribulations. So, and we used to love to talk about our kids and the
Yeah.
different things that came about in raising them, and share stories on that. Love to share that with folks as well. As
Yeah.
I talked about earlier, my hope is we'll begin to do these private chats with folks who are willing to subscribe to us and do a paid subscription. Have trial watch parties. We'll have a trial watch club where the folks, our close paid subscribers can come in, watch trials with us, and we can comment on the trials and get a chat going during trials as well, which, as you said, adds the sort of interactive element that we didn't really have at court
Yeah.
TV. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is something that no matter what goes on in the rest of our lives, I'd hope to keep being able to do this.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to do it with you, Michael, and I'm looking forward to the next steps. And again, everybody who's interested in those conversations, please join us.
All right, Judge Ashley, love you as always. Folks, we'll see you again real soon. Thank you so much for joining us and supporting us.